It's Conference Championships weekend, and there will be incredible action in the Big 10s, Big 12s, ACCs, and all the rest. But 3 specific weights will tell us a lot about the NCAA postseason. In other news, the final dual rankings have trickled in, and there's a major fight this weekend that involves a wrestler. And no, it's not one of the Paul brothers. All that in this week's wrestling headlines presented by Fanco. Now let's stop stalling and get to our first wrestling headline. It's postseason time. NCAA allocations have been released, and I got to tell you about the 3 toughest weights across every single conference. These weights could have a major impact on the NCAA championship as far as seedings, as far as what we can expect come Tulsa, Oklahoma. The first weight of these is 165 pounds in the Big 12. If you don't know, if you haven't been following, this weight's one of the toughest out of any in the entire NCAA, but specifically in the Big 12, you have Keegan O'Toole of Mizzou and David Carr of Iowa State, who these are the top 2 dogs at the weight. They've already flip-flopped rankings once whenever David Carr was the number 2 and beat out O'Toole in the dual meet by a 7-2 decision. And it was a pretty heavily in favor of David Carr match. Like, he dominated that match, riding out Keegan O'Toole in the 3rd period. And I think not only that, with these 2 guys that could decide who the number 1 seed is at NCAAs, but also you have outside contenders like Peyton Hall of West Virginia, who could add a wrench in the system. He's had decision losses to each of these guys, the top 2 guys, but he's wrestled each of them pretty tough. A couple other guys at the weight that, I mean, just look at the rest of this weight class. It's insane. Michael Caliendo of North Dakota State, who's just a freshman. Garrett Ninehouse of Oklahoma, a transfer into the Big 12 this year. Wyatt Sheets, an All-American at Oklahoma State. Tanner Cook. I mean, you could see some craziness go down here. By the way, those rankings were from Flow Wrestling. If you want the rest of those, you can subscribe to their platform. They'll actually be streaming the EIWA championships this weekend if you're interested in watching those. The second weight to watch out for is 157 pounds in the ACC. This weight is very fun. This is a weight I was looking forward to at the beginning of the year because you got Austin O'Connor of North Carolina at the top, former NCAA champion. Then you got Bryce Andonian, All-American, who lets things fly, and you have Ed Scott of NC State, who is just right there with each of them. Now, O'Connor is the top dog because he has a major decision over Andonian. He has a decision over Ed Scott this year, but I would take all that honestly with a grain of salt because these 3 wrestlers are so tough. Andonian may have majored Ed Scott, but remember how high-flying that match was? I mean, it was like back and forth. It was craziness. It was tosses. It was you don't know what to expect. And Andonian ended up getting that major, but I could see that going back and forth. I think a lot of fans are underestimating Austin O'Connor. He's not just an All-American, he's a national champion. And he had not a great postseason last year, but that's because he was injured. And this year, he seems to be really getting into his groove. Another guy I want to throw in here is Deshaun Casto, just because he beat O'Connor last year, but he's now at Pitt, and he hasn't had the most phenomenal season, but maybe he peaks at the right time and gets things done. The third weight is 285 pounds in the Big 10, and this is because, honestly, whoever wins this weight is likely going to be the number 1 seed at NCAAs. Mason Parris is the number 1 ranked wrestler in the entire country of Michigan right now, but you have other guys right behind him, like Greg Kirkfleet of Penn State and Anthony Cassiope of Iowa, each of those 2 having taken losses to Mason Parris. The number 2 guy is Kirkfleet behind Parris, but he had a win over Anthony Cassiope. He dominated him pretty bad in the dual meet, and the outside contender besides these guys is Lucas Davison of Northwestern. I think this is going to be a fun weight to watch, each of them because they're seeking their first Big 10 title, because Gable Steveson has been the top dog at the weight for the past couple of years. So how do you watch the conference championships? Well, if you're not following along the scroll at the bottom of your screen, here's a quick little chart. The conference championships will start as soon as Friday with the MAC championships, leading into Saturday and Sunday. The big one you're probably going to want to watch is the Big 10 championship Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Big 12's 9 p.m. Sunday, ACC 7 p.m. It's just going to be a fun weekend of wrestling on Sunday night. Make sure you're tuning into all of those, and I'll be posting this graphic later on Fanco Wrestling, so make sure you blast up with that subscribe button so you can see that. And with the postseason here, you want to make sure your skin is staying clean and healthy. Trust me, you don't want to be dealing with diseases, ringworm, impetigo, or even dry skin, all which could keep you from wrestling in some of the best moments of your career. So what do you do about it? Well, the best offense is a good defense, which is why I recommend Defense Soap products. Specifically, their peppermint and acne care products are phenomenal for taking care of your skin. The difference with Defense Soap is that they don't use the harsh chemicals that other larger companies use. They use natural ingredients that don't harm your skin. To feel that difference for yourself, you can go to defensesoap.com to order some for yourself. Thanks to Defense Soap for sponsoring this video. So that moves us to our second wrestling headline, which is that the final NCAA dual meet rankings are in. And that is happening because the final dual meet actually did happen over the weekend. In case you missed it, Oregon State thumped Stanford 30-3. And not only that, but Shane Griffith actually took a loss to Matthew Ogwin of Oregon State, a 3-2 decision. Wow, what a crazy final match and duel to end the season on. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the final dual meet rankings. And the rankings that I like to go off of are Flow Wrestling dual rankings. And some of the top teams I want to talk about are Penn State, end of the season, undefeated, 16-0. Followed by Iowa, who finished 15-1. NC State had a great dual meet season. They actually ended up their season 14-1. They started all the way down at number 12 and finished all the way up at number 3 with just a honestly phenomenal year, with their only loss coming to Virginia Tech, who the Hokies had a great match against them, and they beat them 16-14. It was a fun dual meet to watch. And ending in fourth was Nebraska. 12-3 was their final record. And I'll tell you what, you want to talk about a team that was unranked at the beginning of the year, had no Ridge Lovett, the returning national finalist, in the lineup, and they ended up this season at number 4. If they had Ridge, I mean, they could be a top 3 team. That's only one jump in the rankings, but still, what a great year for the Cornhuskers. At number 5 is Ohio State. 13-3, they ended the season with a good year. They stayed around the same the entire season. Their only real losses coming to a few of those top teams. Iowa State, a team that has impressed me throughout the entire season. From the beginning, whenever they beat Wisconsin, who kind of fell off a little bit. Cornell, Arizona State, Oklahoma State. And they did drop a loss to Mizzou, which kind of dropped them in these rankings, but still, what a year for Iowa State, who finished the season 16-3. Cornell finished the season 12-3, where Virginia Tech finished 10-3. And the final 2 teams in these rankings are Mizzou and Northwestern. Northwestern is a team that, I don't know, like they have a lot of tough guys in the lineup, and I think they'll actually end up having a pretty good postseason. But I mean, look at the season. Their only losses are to who? Iowa, Nebraska, and Ohio State, who are all ranked above them. And they wrestled a tough Big Ten schedule. These are the final rankings. You can find them on Flow Wrestling, exactly what I go over here if you want to see the rest of the top 25. My takeaway is that it was a insane dual meet season, and you can only predict so much at the beginning of the year with how things are going to turn out. And it was a fun year overall. Are there any teams that you're surprised aren't in this mix? I mean, maybe Oklahoma State not being in the top 10. They just missed out, but I'd like to hear your take on that. And the third headline is that former Penn State wrestler Bo Nickal is making his UFC debut this weekend on the main card. It's a fight that I am highly anticipating, but if you're unfamiliar, Bo Nickal is a former Penn State wrestler, 3-time national champion, and honestly one of Penn State's best of all time. Hodge Trophy winner. I mean, he has dominated the sport, and now he is going to dominate in the UFC. If you haven't been following his career so far as a pro fighter, he's won 3 pro fights, none of which have gone the full distance. He has dominated in the Dana White Contender Series. He actually had to fight a couple of fights just due to his lack of experience, and Dana wanted to see him fight a little bit more until officially giving him out a contract. These are some of his stats that I found here on UFC, which I just find these stats so awesome to look at. I wish we had even some more of these in wrestling, but 70% striking accuracy, 100% takedown accuracy, which, I mean, can we really be surprised about that, right? His average fight time is 57 seconds. Wow. Like, that's just wild to me that is how dominant he has been. That's what Bo does. But I'm really looking forward to, because I think his fights have gone, and this is coming from a perspective of somebody who's not in a MMA background, not somebody who has followed fighting that much over the years, and Bo has helped me get into fighting, is that he fought like the first fight is like, okay, yeah, he's gonna knock that guy out. And then the fights got like progressively tougher, and I think this fight that's coming up on the main card against Jamie Pickett will be his toughest fight yet, and really will tell a lot to the entire MMA community, and will hopefully get a lot of wrestling fans excited as well, because Pickett has earned multiple knockouts himself throughout his career and is said to be a tough striker on his feet. I think Bo's accuracy, his takedown percentage, is going to be a good matchup against Pickett, who's been fighting for a couple of years now. This is on the same fight as John Jones that's happening this weekend. Now, Bo Nickal is the heavy favorite here with a minus 1,800 betting odds against Jamie Pickett, who's plus 750. And I think the exciting thing here is Bo Nickal is bringing a lot of excitement and attention to the sport of wrestling. I've met a lot of MMA fans, and if you are one of those MMA fans who's just getting into wrestling, make sure you leave a comment, because I'm interested to hear that you're getting into the sport. Bo's got me into MMA, which I think is a great, just correlation between wrestling and MMA. Anyways, if you want to hear more about Bo Nickal's full story about how he made that transition from wrestling into the UFC as a pro fighter, you can watch this video right here. And if you aren't interested in that, but want to stay interested on the latest wrestling headlines, make sure you hit subscribe to Fanco Wrestling. Those were your wrestling headlines.